But we begin in Florida, where there's a desperate race to prepare for the menace of Hurricane Milton as it churns through the Gulf of Mexico towards the west coast. It's expected to make landfall late tomorrow.
This is literally catastrophic, and I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
Milton is set to make a direct hit on Tampa. That's home to more than 3 million people. Storm surges of more than 4 meters are expected in some areas. Millions are evacuating inland or north. Milton has already scraped by Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, bringing strong waves and winds overnight. U.S. President Joe Biden has canceled a planned trip to Germany and Angola to monitor the storm. He spoke earlier today.
We're driving up preparedness for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms in 100 years to hit Florida, and continued efforts on Hurricane Helene. I've directed this team to do everything it can to save lives and our communities, and help our communities before, during, and after these extreme weather events.
Ivan Rodriguez of CNN is in Tampa following the preparation efforts ahead of Milton's landfall.
Officials have been pleading with millions of people across the Tampa Bay area to get out and get out now. This is the last full day that people have to evacuate before we begin to see conditions deteriorate. Where I'm standing here is a beach on Davis Island, just south of downtown Tampa. By no means is this a designated sandbag distribution site, but we've been seeing people throughout the morning and afternoon come to this beach with their own bags, fill those bags up, and then place them either in front of their homes or their businesses. And people I've been chatting with here throughout the day tell me as soon as they finish that, their plan is to then evacuate. Some people are going to be heading north, others a little bit more inland, but the goal is just to get out of the trajectory of Hurricane Milton. And a lot of people, from what I've gathered so far today, are taking this very seriously. For one, communication has been very clear from officials. The Florida's Attorney General saying in a statement that people might have to consider writing their name on Sharpie on their arm if they plan to stay behind in those mandatory evacuation zones so that they can be identified. But here, the evacuations are continuing. We're all seeing traffic on highways to help evacuees evacuate. We're seeing that the state of Florida is helping by suspending tolls on major highways. They're also letting drivers get on that shoulder to help traffic flow a little bit more. Just minutes away from where I'm standing here is a neighborhood. That neighborhood we've seen with piles of debris in front of homes and also apartment complexes. That debris was caused by the damage from Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago when it made landfall. Officials say that they're still working around the clock to get as much of that debris out, because if it's still around and when those big winds come in from Hurricane Milton, we could see a lot of that debris flying around and becoming dangerous projectiles. At the very least, it could impede first responders or crews when they're trying to access those roads to either help with search and rescue or to restore power. We also know that 5,000 National Guardsmen here in the state of Florida have been activated in preparation for Hurricane Milton. So these final hours are very busy here as people are continuing to get all the supplies they need and evacuate. In Tampa, Florida, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
Thomas Mance. He is the president and CEO of Feeding Tampa Bay, which provides food assistance across West Central Florida. Appreciate you taking the time. I can just imagine how busy you are. Thomas, you're in Tampa Bay, a place that has not been hit directly by a major hurricane since 1921, and your nonprofit Feeding Tampa Bay is in full preparation mode. What does that mean, and how are you preparing?
Well, thank you. And, you know, I was listening to the remarks of our great Mayor Castor, and I think that's what all of us understand is the size and scope and the potential intensity of a storm of this nature is unusual to us, to say the least. We've had glancing blows and storms that have come north and south of us or alongside us, but this one aimed directly at us is a much different circumstance. So organizations like ours, we provide food and other resources, right? So our organization has been stocking up and staffing up as much as possible pre-storm, and we're just coming out of response to Hurricane Helene, and so we've already had an elevated level of response, but we're bringing in even more resources so that we're able to, the moment the storm passes through, to step out and start to answer the needs of friends and neighbors, because there's the immediate crisis in the aftermath of the storm, then there's the few days past that, and then there's the long recovery that happens. And an organization like ours wants to make sure that we're there every step of the way.
So you want to make sure you're going to be there every step of the way, but I imagine you too are being affected by this approaching hurricane. What are you doing for yourself and your family?
I think all of us, the work that we do, we're first responders. It's our obligation and responsibility to be here. Personally, I'm in an area that's a relatively higher and hopefully drier, not away from the wind, but, we'll be here on campus, some of us ready to go and making sure that we weather the storm. But I think everybody that does this work has the measure of responsibility of what's happening in your home and the obligation you have to make sure your community is okay.
And what are you hearing from people in your community?
So folks are pretty scared. I think it's, coming off the heels of a hurricane we just had, there was a sense before some storms, people have a somewhat, maybe a lackadaisical attitude towards some of them, and it hit us hard. The flooding here was staggering. And so this storm on top of that has got folks on edge. As you probably would have observed across other media, we've had run on gas, run on food, a run on plywood as people have attempted to take care of their homes and or leave the area. I think many more people are heeding the evacuation order than ever before. But, it's interesting. In a community, you can feel the sense of nervousness and tension, and you can feel that here in Tampa right now. People are on edge, and folks are a little more aggressive on the road or a little more assertive in some of their gathering of resources. And so it's just a time. People, someone's afraid they're going to come back, they're going to leave today and come back tomorrow and not have a house. And that's a staggeringly difficult moment for a human.
Or potentially lose a loved one or lose their life. I mean, when you hear the mayor, we heard the mayor say this.
Yeah, God forbid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But this is obviously.
And I think, we would always say to folks, pay attention. There's reasons why the professionals are in the places they are and give the counsel they do. Because they know what they're doing. And so we would encourage everybody to follow those dictates, because they will save your life. And so we will do the same. Please be assured I'll be safe and my colleagues will be safe. But I think importantly, the moment that the storm passes by, organizations like Feeding Tampa Bay want to be immediately available to our neighbors who have just suffered a crushing blow or potentially suffered a crushing blow.
Do you think you have enough to help as many people as could need it? This could really be a devastating storm.
In the past, we have been able to step up and meet the need for the most part. I think the question you're asking, which is the question on everybody's mind, we're sitting here, on a Tuesday afternoon not knowing what the impact would be. And the answer that I would give is, I believe we'll be able to bring in enough resources from around the state, around the country to make sure that our neighbors are okay. But, I don't know what things will be like in 24 to 36 hours. And I think that's part of the anxiousness all of us feel, is what will be the impact of the storm after he's passed through and what's going to be needed. I surely, as someone that does this for a living, I surely hope every single day that we have enough to take care of someone who needs us.
Yeah, I bet you do. How are you feeling about this? In terms of some of the forecasting of just how powerful, how dangerous this storm could be.
It's funny. It's like riding a wave. You'll hear one piece of information from a forecaster and you'll think, okay, maybe this is going to be better. And then you'll hear another one, right? And so you just keep riding waves. I think what our intention always is to try and stay in the middle, take the information as it is, and make sure that we're prepared no matter what. I think, to be very, very clear, this storm is going to hit us hard. I don't think that's in question. And for Tampa Bay, as you mentioned at the top of the interview, this is the first time in over 100 years we've seen this. So let there be no doubt about that. The question becomes, what is that impact like? And what do we have to do in the aftermath of that impact to make sure our community recovers?
Well, we wish you and your community the best through this. Thomas, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Thomas Mance is the president and CEO of Feeding Tampa Bay.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.